Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're right at the start time, so I think we can go ahead and get started. We have a pretty good group here. Thank you again for kind of making the time to be here. You probably saw the invitation and saw that today we're going to be building a system in Notion centered around project management. And so that's a topic that I'm personally really passionate about and excited to walk through this together. I want to take a second to introduce myself. My name is Monica. I'm a customer success manager here at Notion. I specifically work with enterprises who are implementing Notion. And so I spent a lot of time on a lot of calls, kind of consultations, seeing the various project management related systems that have been created out there. And sometimes they can be a bit of a hodgepodge across a variety of other tools. And so I've gotten to the point where I've been able to extract some really great kind of best practices that can be implemented in Notion. If you're here, you probably have some aspect of project management in your role. Maybe you're a PM who's focused on a really great release. Maybe you're a designer who's managing a team who's delivering assets. Or maybe you are a project manager and you're kind of overseeing everyone's bandwidth. I have a few ideas of something that we can build that by the end of this session, you'll walk away with a system that can really work. And I do want to say that I'm not going to ascribe to any particular kind of project management methodology. It won't be specifically Scrum or specifically Agile, but the idea is that I'll show kind of a starter kit. And based off of the inspiration of this starter kit, you can kind of take it with you and adapt it and expand on it to make it really work for your specific needs. So we'll get started. For those of you who don't know what Notion is an all-in-one workspace for your documents, your wikis, for advanced things like task and project management, and then overall team collaboration. And so when it comes to project management, I've seen kind of the benefits in two major ways. One being the fact that you can consolidate a lot of what's going on within Notion if you're using a variety of tools. But you can also make it highly customizable and tailored to your needs because the nature of Notion and the nature of our block system and the structure is extremely, extremely flexible. And so I'm going to show you that today. It is a live stream. It is a build with me. We have a good group here. And so I want to make this like as interactive as something like this can possibly get. So there is a live chat going on. Feel free to drop your name in the live chat, say hi, where you're joining us from, maybe what company you're representing, and we can kind of get going on this together. I'll be keeping an eye on it so I can answer things kind of in real time. I'll also be pausing for questions throughout. And so don't feel shy about dropping your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A. Hello from Germany. Nice. Grilling Consulting. Nice to have you. Cool. So to get started, what you're looking at here is a workspace in Notion. I think a lot of people joining today have some familiarity with Notion, but I'm just going to do a quick summary of what a workspace is, and then I'm going to spend the majority of this build with me on databases and templates, which is really where the project management features kind of stand out. Hello from Barcelona. Hello from India, France, Italy. All right, we have a pretty good global group here. Thank you for everyone joining from all different time zones. are pretty much covered here. So what you're looking at is a Notion workspace. This entire instance is what we call a workspace. And this particular workspace is from an example company called Acme Enterprise. Acme Enterprise has decided to organize their workspace with this left-hand navigation here with a variety of these kind of top-level pages. We refer to them as top-level pages. Which is the highest page on the hierarchy of content. And within a top level page, there can be various subpages linked within. They've created a really nice homepage here called Acme Home, which might be inspiration for your organization to have a homepage. And this is kind of the static information that can exist that the whole organization might need to reference frequently, like the company's mission statement, the values, maybe the employee directory, maybe the vacation policy. And so this is that landing page for everyone to see. But they've also structured the workspace with these top level pages reflecting their various functional areas and their teams, like the product team, the HR team, engineering, design, marketing, and also by some document functions, whether it's meeting notes, docs, or tasks. So this is a, apologies, this is an organization that I typically recommend that's a best practice is try to make the top level page the largest category that you can have, probably by team or function. And that way all of the subpages that are linked within can be nested under that top level page. And that way finding things becomes a lot easier. Great. So I'm going to walk you through kind of what they have. They have a home page. They have a page for their company OKRs. So for organizations that are familiar with the OKR structure, this sample company has done a great job of setting up their OKRs through a database, which is what we're going to cover for the majority of this build with me. They have a database specifically dedicated to all of their running meeting notes. I'll jump over to the product team's homepage. This is everything that a product team would need to have in a sort of a wiki or intranet, which is maybe their roadmap, their feature directory, and some other referenceable documentation. Same thing is happening with the engineering team, some of the engineering documentation, and then design, marketing, sales, and support, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, like Notion is great because it's not just like a series of random pages that are created in some random folder, but rather it's actually like a navigable wiki / intranet where everything is really interconnected and visible across the organization. Cool. So any questions or thoughts on workspace organization, feel free to drop it in the chat and I'll take a look at that. Somebody's asking, what is an OKR? It's an objectives and key results. It's kind of a system that's used to track how a company is doing their planning. So they might plan for a series of high-level objectives that have correlated key results for each objective. But I won't get too much into this. This is just a methodology that this company prefers. But I wanted to show how it can be organized and tracked in Notion. Great. So I want to dive into, for the sake of project management and what's important for project management, is mainly going to come through an advanced feature in Notion, which are called our databases. And before I show you exactly what a database is, I kind of want to explain Notion databases conceptually, because I think that it's a bit of a mindset shift to understand them. So I created this handy page in my Notion page called Explanation of Databases. And I'll go into that. I'm seeing some questions coming in for the Q&A. Someone is asking, is this workspace going to be available to follow along? I believe the answer to this is yes. My team is going to provide a recording of this for everyone that has joined, as well as access to a template for how to set this up. So going back to databases, if you think of a traditional database, either in back-end engineering or in kind of traditional systems, it's like a series of information that's organized by some category. For example, you might have a database of your entire customer list, and you might have a database of, if you're a storefront, of all of your store locations, or you might have a database of all of your inventory items. And then from that, you can create relations between them to create the picture of one entry. For example, you might connect which customer ordered which items from which store. But the whole backbone of this is the fact that all of these individual databases exist. This is kind of how it exists in Notion. You can have databases for all of your repository of information, and then you can easily connect them together and link them together as you build out your content in Notion. And you can imagine how this would be beneficial if you're tracking what projects are being worked on at what time, which tasks are subsets of those projects, who's working on what and when, and the releases of all of these things. And so going back to what an actual database looks like, in Notion, the product team has a very handy project roadmap. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with this, the famous roadmap that we plan for kind of every quarter, and seeing what's on the radar and what's in progress. This has been organized through a database. Oh, I'm going to switch to the original view of this database. So before I get into the specifics of this database, you can see that this database in Notion is organized as a table. Because Notion is completely customizable, this table was created exactly how they wanted it to look, with the various labels at the top of the columns that they need in order to track the relevant information. We call these properties. And so as I create a table for project management, what properties are important for me to know? Well, I need to know the name of the project. I need to know the status of the project, the launch date, the priority, maybe the team that's working on it if you're organized in teams or pods, and then who is the responsible engineer kind of driving this project. And so they were able to create this table by creating all of these properties and adding whichever properties made sense for project roadmap. I can always add another property which populates as another column here. So let's say that I wanted to have another property related to maybe the initiative that each project falls under. The various properties that we support can be found in this list when you're selecting the property type. So we support a lot of different properties that helps you format the information in that column really nicely, whether that's a text property, a number, maybe it's a date, maybe it's a URL. In this case, I want to know what initiative it is, and I'm going to create a series of tags. And so that's called our select property. It allows you to select from a list of pre-created tags, and those tags can be created on the fly. So right now there's none for me to pick one, so I can go ahead and create them. Maybe we have an initiative called growth. So this is part of the growth initiative. Maybe we have another initiative called retention. That's a retention initiative. And as I go on and I continue to kind of fill out the information for each project, I can pull from the list of tags that I've created on the fly. You can do fun things like kind of change the color of the tag and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is how we build out this table database in Notion. One really awesome thing to note is that every new row that you create in this database, as I go ahead and I add a new line item, it's not just a row, but it's actually its own full page in Notion, and it's actually an entry into this database. And I can see that by clicking open on the line item. So for example, my project's called Integrate CRM, has all of these properties. I know that it's part of the research and it's in research and design status. It's launching on these dates. This is the priority, but I can also open it as a full page. And this page looks just like a full page in Notion, where it has the properties summarized here, the same exact properties that are in that table. They're dynamic, so I can change them at will. But because it's a full page in Notion, it has the body of a regular page editor, and you can add any content to that page at the bottom. And so for example, for this project called Integrate CRM, maybe I have a description of the, of the project here. Maybe I have a project spec. Maybe I have any links, any images, any documentation that I need to add here. I can simply just add it in the body. I can also add a comment and start a conversation about this project. I can even mention or tag my colleagues and say, hey, Andrea, can you take a look? So that's why I say that databases in Notion is not what you would think of like a traditional spreadsheet. It's not like an Excel spreadsheet with a variety of cells that operate independently, but it really is an entry into a database that you can classify in any way. You can start a conversation around, you can link to in other places in Notion. So it becomes more of a connected system, but it also helps to kind of centralize where all of the information about this project lives and relate it all together by putting things in the body. I'm getting a question, is there any way to hide the properties like it is with the table? That's a great question. So all of these properties are here. Maybe you want to hide one right now that doesn't really make sense. I can always click on it and I can always select hide. So maybe I want to see it. I don't want to see the initiative right now. As far as I know, you cannot hide it here. Yeah, so then when you open the full page view, it's going to have the property in the full page view, not in the table view. However, I'll show you how you can set up different views and different filters in a bit to kind of customize this further. Great. So now that we kind of understand property types and databases, I'm moving into the next part, which is like, this is great. Now, how can I use this for like actual progress along a project or kind of seeing the development of a project over time? Well, we can accomplish this through various views of this database. So as I explained, properties are the building blocks. We can name the property whatever we want, status, launch date. We can choose from the various properties that we support, like a date property or select label property. But because properties are the building blocks, then we can go off of those building blocks to visualize this information in whichever way we want. And we do that through view. So I can click on this option here. You'll see from this list that I've already created a couple, but I'm going to show you what it looks like to create it from scratch. You can click on add a view, and Notion supports 5 major types of views. The first one, which we're looking at, is a table view. The second one is a board view, so like a Kanban board that you might be familiar with, or a Trello board, which is like extremely dynamic, where you can move cards along the board. A calendar view, which probably makes a lot of sense if you have related dates, like launch dates. A list view is like a very simplified list, and you saw that in our meeting notes database. And then a gallery view is like a grid of cards where visual assets are kind of the main piece of content there. So it acts like kind of a Pinterest board. But for project roadmap, probably Kanban would make the most sense. So I can create this board on the fly. And all that it's doing is, I'm going to hide this, is rearranging the same exact information from that database in a different way. In this case, it's rearranging the columns by the initiative that by the property that we created called an initiative. However, I can choose to group these columns by any property that exists because it is the building block. So maybe I actually want to group it by the priority. I want to see what is low, medium, and high. And I can see that it's grouped by here. And because it's dynamic, I can easily move something from, let's say, medium priority to high priority. And I can remain confident that because it's dynamic, the information would have updated in the card here. As you can see, it's on high priority and it updates, in the whole database. Maybe I don't want to group it by priority. Maybe I want to group it by the status of this project. So I can see what's next up, what's in progress, what's in the research and design phase, what's design complete. And it's a very handy feature that it's summarizing this information for me at the top because it's giving me a count of how many items exist in this column. So I know that there's 4 in research and design and 3 in design complete. So not only can we kind of group by and visualize the same information in this view, but I can create this view on the fly, as you've just seen, or I can create it and then save it for future reference. In this case, I've created all of these various views in the past, and I've saved them kind of in their saved position, so I can quickly navigate to them whenever I need them. So as I mentioned, if I want to see the board by the team that's working on it, what is product team 1 working on, what is product team 2 working on, if I want to go again by who it's assigned to, then I can group it by who is the responsible engineer, and so on and so forth. And anyone on my team can access these views at will for just quick navigation. The cool thing about the views is not only are the columns customizable, but the content that you see on the card is customizable as well. And so you can decide which properties to display on the card, making them as rich or as simple as you want. You can do that by clicking on properties and then selecting from this toggle list all of the properties that you want to see versus you don't want to see. So maybe in this case, the initiative is not important, but maybe the team name is important, and maybe the launch date is important. So as you can see, it's dynamically changed. Now on the card, I'm seeing the date, I'm seeing the product team that's working on, et cetera, et cetera. I'll pause for a second for any questions on the various views and groupings that are possible in databases. Cool. Again, now's your chance. Drop anything that you want in the chat or in the Q&A. Awesome. The last thing that I want to show is, let's say we go by status. Aside from grouping our cards by a particular property, you can also use those same properties to filter down what you're looking at and maybe exclude some information or set up some filters. We can do that by clicking on filter and adding a filter here, again, built around our properties. So let's say that I'm looking at all of my projects here by status, what's next up, what's in progress, but I only really care about the projects that I'm working on. In this case, I want to see a filtered view where the responsible engineer is me. So by default, there's an option which says me as the first option, or you can select a colleague. All of a sudden, my view has changed. It's been filtered down. And now I'm only seeing the projects that I am working on as an engineer. And of course, as usual, I can save this view for future reference. And I can save this view as something like, you know, Monica's projects or my projects. And I've actually done that in the past. I called it Monica's projects. In this case, it's grouped by priority because that's what's important to me. And I can see at any given time what are the projects that I'm working on. I'm getting a few questions in the chat about formulas. So I will spend a little bit of time at the end on formulas because I think formulas take everything to the next level. It's a little bit more robust. But the quick response to that is you can, I'll go back to the table view. You can create an additional property here, which is actually a formula. And maybe the formula, you want it to summarize certain numbers, you want it to give an average of certain numbers. You can create the formula here, and all of our formulas are based off of the base of JavaScript. And so we do prompt you and give you the ways, some of the code snippets that you can use, but if you know Java, you can set it up. And that really helps things get a lot more advanced in terms of like tracking data points or statuses. And there's a lot of information about formulas in our help center. Awesome. So now that we've seen this project roadmap, I think all in all, this is a great starting point because you can set up the various views in a way that works really well for your team. Maybe you want to visualize what are projects for the specific engineer in order to do some dependency planning and have visibility into what they're working on. Maybe you want to set up a view that's filtered down to only show me the projects that are coming up in the next week. And that way you're able to see the next week's kind of sprint. And so there's a lot of ways to build this into a system that works for you. But to take this to the next level, I'm going to show how you can actually relate databases together so that it creates a sort of automation and edits to one affects the other. I'll do that by showing our tasks database. So in this organization, there is a master tasks database that they're tracking for. And you might be asking, Monica, what's the point of having a database of all tasks? Can I just write out my tasks on a random page, or can I just write out my tasks as texts or a checklist? Maybe if you go back to the project tracker, maybe within the body of this project, you want to write out the list of tasks here. The problem with that, though, is that it's just static text, you know, like task number 1. Or if I wanted to make a to-do list, right, I could do this task 1, task 2, etc. But then what ends up happening is that this information simply just lives in the body of this project. It's kind of hidden a couple layers deep. And it's just text. You know, there's no way to classify this. There's no way to filter through it or quickly find what I'm looking for. And then there's no way to kind of have accountability on like who's actively working on this task and who's doing what when. So in some instances, we recommend that the best practice is actually to have a master tasks database where you're able to create the task. You're able to assign the task to somebody. This is what we do at Notion. Whenever I need to escalate a bug or maybe create a task for the data team to help me with a data export, or maybe request an asset from the design team. We actually raise it as a task in a task database. It allows us to track it, to assign it, and then it allows for a lot of visibility and accountability because the responsible parties are then updating what's the status, what's the priority, when is it coming out, when will the task be completed. And then, of course, I can always kind of go back historically and I can filter through the past tasks that have been completed, the types, and things like that. So in this case, we recommend tasks in a database rather than just tasks listed as text. So in this task database, we have all of the tasks that the company is working on across the board, whether it's the design team's tasks, the engineering team's tasks, etc. And whenever you create a task, you'll probably label it as what type it is. So whether it's an asset request, whether it's a bug that you're escalating, a triage task, or maybe a data task. And so you can always add a net new task here and begin to add the relevant properties. Now, the interesting thing here is that it's very likely that a certain task is going to be correlated with some of our projects that are ongoing. So if I were to add a new item here, maybe there's a task which is called, I don't know, clean up tech debt. Obviously, this is not really a one-time task, but it's something that's very common. Maybe this is for the engineering team, again, for the engineering team. And I can assign all of the relevant properties. But I know that this task is definitely going to be related to a project that we have overall. So rather than having to manually type out the project name here or creating a text field just to type out the project name, I can say, hey, I already have a projects database. Let me just relate them together so that any changes to this task kind of updates the status of the project. And so I can do that through a very awesome ability in Notion, which is called relation. Someone is asking about the type here. These are just labels that we created for the types of tasks that make sense at this company. They have tasks which are to investigate a bug. They have tasks which are an asset request from the design team, etc. But these labels can be whatever you need them to be. So I can go ahead and create a relation here. There's this advanced property called relation. And what a relation is doing is basically allows you to link two databases together. So right now it's asking me, okay, you're in the task database. Which other database do you want to link to? And from there, it'll pull up the list of all of the databases that exist across this whole workspace. But in this case, I'm very interested in linking it to the project roadmap that we have going. So I've created this relation, it's over here. By default, it's called column, but I actually want to rename it to project. And from there, what I can do is basically select what project is this task related to. For example, the first task, let's say that this is related to the project called Integrate CRM. I can add it here. Let's say the second task is related to the second project, and also, and so on and so forth. So I can keep doing that. Sorry, my loading speed. Okay, so let's say it's related to that. And of course, this will become like a very natural thing to fill out as you continue to add rows in this database. As I've just added this one, I'm going to be filling out everything, but now I have this option which allows me to select the project as well. So cleanup tech debt is maybe a task related to the API. And I will assign it to colleague. I will give a status next up. Priority for this is very high. I won't set a due date. I'll let somebody else set a due date. So now, oh, I forgot to do the most important thing, which is to assign an emoji. All of our pages in Notion have the ability to assign an emoji. If you click on add icon, it will randomly generate one. Let's see what it does. Okay, that looks great to me. But if you don't like the one that it randomly generates, you can choose one from here. You can also upload a custom one from the web. I like this one. I think the 8-ball represents like cleaning up the tech debt, winning the game. I don't know, something like that. Great. So as I can see, this task has been related to this project. I haven't gone through to do all of them yet, but in theory, all of the tasks would be related to a project. And this sync works both ways, which is the best part. So I can head over back to my project roadmap. And now, if I go all the way over here, oh, I need to delete this. If I were to check this out, I can see that it's been updated with a property. Now it's called related to tasks. So it's working both ways. I'm just going to call this tasks. And now I can easily see which task is associated with the project Integrate CRM. If there are multiple tasks related here, if I had selected 5 or 10 tasks for this project called Integrate CRM, all of the tasks would be listed out here. And the fantastic part of this relation is that it really does take it to the next level in terms of maintaining the data sanity of either side of this, maintains all of the properties and the tracking that's important for a project separately from all of the properties and the tracking that's important for tasks, but it allows you to relate them in a way that makes them codependent, but also like maintains the hygiene of everything you're tracking for either one. I'll pause for a second. Any questions on relating tasks with projects? Someone's asking me to show this again, which I'm always happy to do, so I can go back and show that one more time. Going back to the tasks database, here are all of my tasks listed out. Here's the name of each task. Here are all of the properties. You can always add a net new property, which I'll do here. And for this one, since we're relating them, the property is going to be called a relation. And as soon as I click on relation, again, I get this prompt that's asking me, which database are you trying to connect with this one? And I will say, I'm trying to connect the project database with this task database. So I'll select it. It will create the relation. By default, it just gives it a generic name called column. Like I did before, I renamed it as project. And now when I go to fill out this information, what it's doing is it's pulling out a drop-down list of all of the line items in the project database, and it allows me to pull from that. Yep, awesome. Thanks, Riley. All right, I'm gonna just delete this for a second. For the sake of this, I'm gonna just add a few more, I'm gonna connect a few more projects so that it looks a little bit more filled out. Assign to me. Great. I'm going to choose Integrate CRM again. Okay. So as we move into like the later part of this build with me, I think something that project managers and product managers also care about is time tracking, dependency tracking, who's working on what when, and how can we kind of do estimations better. I'm going to quickly just look at the Q&A one more time. Okay, I have one question related to, can you change the status of a task to update the properties of the project it's related to? Yes, that's what I'm going to show next. So I'm moving into the kind of automation part. I have another really great question that I get a lot, which is, in some cases, everything is in one big database. Maybe you have one big database that has your projects, but maybe it also has some tasks in that same database as like tags or line items. So what's the benefit of keeping them separate? One thing that I like to recommend is it all depends on the properties that you need to track. So for example, in this task database, some properties that are important here are like, what type of task is it? I need to categorize the task. And I need to assign it to someone, and I need to assign a priority to it and a status to it that is only related to the task. There's not a lot of overlap in terms of these important properties to track. There's not a ton of overlap with these same properties in a project tracker, because I actually want to maintain the project properties differently. For me, the project status names are different here. The team that's working on it is something that I want to track, so this is different. So because there's not a whole lot of overlap in the properties that apply to projects versus the properties that apply to tasks, then putting them in one giant database would mean that some of the properties are just going to be blank for like half of the items, because those are specifically to tasks or projects. But in this case, like, it makes more sense for me to track them separately and then just relate them because these properties are unique to each one. I think that's a really important question and distinction to make. Is it's totally up to you, but leveraging the power of relations when possible, I think is typically the best practice versus just making everything a net new column. I have another question related to, are the filtered views in the board saved? Yep, if you rename them and save them, they'll be saved. So I've saved a couple of ones here, going back to what we discussed earlier. I've saved one called by status. And the way that you can save it is basically create it and then click on the little 3 dots and rename it. So let's say I want to rename this saved view by status, hit enter, now it's saved. And it appears on my drop-down list. And it will save with whatever filters and groupings you've applied. If you've created a ton of views in the past and you want to kind of clean it up and you say, hey, there's only like 3 main views that I care about, then maybe you just want to delete this view. And it doesn't affect any of the data. It doesn't delete any content here. It just deletes the view. That's a great question. Okay, so going back to this relationship, and this is what I kind of want to end on, is this relationship has been created in both directions. So I've related which tasks are related to projects, and if I go back to the project tracker, I can see which tasks are related to those projects as well. I'm gonna just start a fresh view. Okay. So if I were to open let me open one that's more built out, like Integrate CRM. Again, going back to Integrate CRM, I can open it and I can see that these 2 tasks were related. The next thing that you can do to take it even one step further is the automation of changes and the rolling up and summarizing of information. So because a relation already exists between the projects and the tasks, and the tasks database has certain other properties there, like the status or the launch date, I can actually roll up that information on the project database to see it surfaced right here without having to go to the task database. This is called a roll-up, and you can do a roll-up once you have a relation already built. This is in our advanced property section, and it's called roll-up. So the roll-up is going to ask me, as soon as I click into this column, it's going to ask me, what relationship are we talking about? We're talking about the projects and tasks relation. And what information do we want to roll up into this view? In this case, maybe I want to roll up the status of all of these tasks because I want to see it on the projects database. So there's one called status, and then you can display the status in various ways, like the original, you can do a count of them, but in this case, it makes the most sense to show the original. So now I'll rename this to tasks status. So now in this database, I can easily see all of the tasks that are related to this database. I don't know why my relation is not showing. I will add it here one more time. Okay, now I can easily see the status of each task that I've related. So if I were to open this up again, I can see that the tasks here, I'll rearrange this a little bit. The tasks that are related to this project are syncing issue and file name attachment, and they're in order, so I know that the status of each one is next up and in progress. We can also roll up any other type of information that we want to see in either direction. So closing with the tasks database, we have the related project. And maybe we want to roll up something like the project's launch date. And I'll show the original. So now I don't have to worry about manually inputting the project's launch date. I know that the launch date is related to this project. The Integrate CRM launch date is going to be this day. The Improved Permissions launch date is going to be this day, which is different from the due date of the original task. So I was able to relate them here and also roll up additional information. I want to show one more, which is maybe a specific task has, or let's just say maybe a specific project has some, let's say, time associated with it, like in hours. And let's say that the estimate has been done for these projects. So I'm just going to move this over here. And we know that each project, this one will take 10 hours, this one will take 5 hours, this one will take 4 hours, 3 hours, 10 hours. Right, so we have attached kind of estimation around this. So I can always go back to the task database, and in case I need to quickly roll up not only the name of the project and when the due date is, but how long the project is estimated to take, I can again roll that up from the task database. It'll ask me to select the existing relation, and then it'll ask me to select the type of property I want to display, in this case, time and hours, and I'll just show the original. Okay, so for these, I'm able to see the time and hours. Let's say hours estimate. I want to label this here. And so now I can easily see in this whole entire database of tasks, I can easily open any single one. I can now see what are the properties of the task. I can see which project it's related to, how many hours this project is estimated to take in case I need to track how long my task should actually be taking. And then I'll rename this as project launch. So now I can see the project launch date, which is different from the due date of this task. So I say all of this to say that relations are the best way to surface information that exists in other databases and link them together. Of course, because they are already linked, then any change to one will affect a change in the other. If I were to change the project launch date, or if I were to change the status here from, let's say, completed to in progress, because it's linked in the projects database, if I go back to the projects database, I can see that the status has been changed there. Same with the due date. I can change the due date here, and if this is rolled up as information somewhere else, then it will affect the change somewhere else. You can do pretty advanced things with rollups. So for example, if your tasks have hours estimates and each task, let's say a certain task will take 30 minutes, a certain task will take an hour, then you can assign hours to each task, and then you can actually roll up, instead of the original, you can roll up the sum of all of those tasks together. You can also roll up the statuses, as I showed before, to show which tasks are still in progress or complete as you make progress through the project. I'm going to take a second to look at the Q&A. If tasks have different due dates in a project, is that possible to visualize in the project page? Yep, so that's what I'm showing here. So the task has a different due date than the project launch. But I'm seeing both of them visualized here. If I don't want to see it, I can always delete it. But this is pulling from the projects database, and this is right here in the task database. Is it possible to show the task with progress in a line? Reese, if you can clarify your question, I'm not really understanding it. Okay. Awesome. And again, as I mentioned, like, feel free to drop anything either in the Q&A or in the chat. Since we're coming up on time, I'll end with kind of showcasing a more advanced database, because I think that there are some questions about formulas and rollups. So I'm going back to the OKR. If you don't use OKRs, you don't need to worry about the acronym or the philosophy of OKR, but just to show you kind of a high level way that databases can really create a robust system. So in this case, I have a series of objectives. These are my 3 objectives. As you can see in this next column, because of the arrow, that means that there is a relation. So it's related to a certain number of key results. So this objective grow customer base has 3 key results. The status of these 3 key results is being rolled up. As you can see, this little magnifying glass means it's a roll up and we're rolling up the status. So we can actually see the status of each one. These 2 are on track and this one is behind. Then it's also summarizing the results of these 3 key results in a number format. So the results is currently at 3,200 out of these gold numbers. And then our targeted result is a total number that we're targeting towards. So as you can see, we haven't yet reached our target of 8,000. So this is a great way to show an objective as it relates to certain key results, as it relates to rolling up the status and any numerical information. Going down to the key results database, which is actually this database, we have all of our key results listed out. All of the key results have a status attached, a target result, and a current result. And we've created a formula to show the progress along that. So because this key results tracker exists, similar to our task tracker, we're able to pull all of these key results and roll them up into how they're tracking against our objectives and relate them to our objectives. So that's kind of like an example of like a very inspirational way to create all of these different relations. I'm getting a question related to if you change certain items, will you receive notifications of changes? That's a really great question. So we always have like a change log of what's been going on the page. You can click on this updates in the top right corner, and it will summarize every change that has been made and by whom. So as you can see, I changed the status from completed to in progress. You can scroll through here as kind of a news feed of the changes that are being made. You can also choose to, if I click on updates again, there's a toggle which is called follow this page. So as long as I have that turned on, like I am personally following this page, so any changes to this page will actually show up in my notifications bar here, and it will proactively update me. So it just depends if you want to follow it and get all of the notifications in your update section, you can follow it. If you don't want to follow it and be pinged every time it's updated, you can just head over to the page and scroll through the newsfeed. I got a question, realistically, how long does or should this take to set up? Yeah, that's a great question. So of course, for the sake of this live stream, like we're setting up everything from 0 to 1, like all of these line items. But in theory, like if you're working across your team, if you're working across an organization, these databases are going to be built out over time, right? Just as I mentioned in this company, there's a meeting notes database. Obviously, they're only adding a new line item whenever there's a new meeting note. Obviously, you would only be adding a new line item whenever there's a new task. So the bulk of the work is going to be just setting up the skeleton structure of this table with the properties that you want. But then the idea is that everyone is collaborating and contributing. As things get more and more built out, you might realize, hey, it's important for us to relate two things together. We have a database of projects, we have a database of tasks. We need to link them so it's a parent-child relationship. Or we have a database of all of our important customers and clients, and we have a separate database of projects. We need to do parent-child and understand which projects are we working on for which customers. But it's more of a system that you're building out for greater collaboration. And yeah, I would say like, it's not a one day setup. It's gonna be kind of a natural progression of your workflow, but just spending some time on the front end, setting up the properties. Okay, I know we're a bit over time, and this is like a lot of content to show for today. So I do want to give a couple of seconds for people to ask any more questions. So I got a question related to, can you go over the docs page? So in this company, they keep a master database of all of their running documents, whether that's a project spec, whether that's a landing page design, some user feedback, and then they'll label the type of document that it is based off of the properties. So they labeled this one a design spec, and it's currently in review. This is like a central repository of all of the documents that exist. And this is definitely one way to do it, because of course, as long as you have a central docs database, you can always relate this to any project. So I can easily pull in all of the documents, either all of the meeting notes, all of the specs, all of the design mockups that we've created for one project by just relating them to that project. And then I got another last question related to, for the Kanban board, can you visualize multiple initiatives? And the answer to that is yes. So for the Kanban board, you can group it by kind of any property that is here. So I can have the groupings displaying it by who's responsible, by displaying it by the initiative, if we have initiatives as categories, or by the priority, for example. Right. So again, I want to thank everyone for making the time. This is kind of the first of its kind that we're doing. And I would love to have some feedback if this is something that would be useful for everyone to see in the future, like different versions of this, different kind of systems that we can set up, and just kind of disclosing and surfacing the more advanced features of Notion. I'm going to stop right here, although I could have taken it further. I think this is a great starting point. You can see how projects and tasks get related, which creates kind of this bilateral sync. And then you can see how the various views that you can create can help keep everyone on track by displaying the information that's most relevant to them. Everyone that registered will receive a recording of this, as well as a template related to how you can do this and a summary. I really appreciate, again, the great feedback that's coming in, the energy that's coming in. We might do some more build with me's in the future. So would love to hear if you enjoyed it or if you would be willing to join one in the future.